Bruce, I'm going to try to remember to check in with you occasionally for questions. If I don't, please stop me along the way so that I don't get carried away and go blowing through things, and don't stop. And I'll tell you what, if the audio is still acting up on your end, so if I've got, I don't know the gentleman's name, but the person who just was talking about all the events. If there are questions, why don't you wave your arms and I'll double check on chat just to make sure that I know what the questions are, just in case the audio is kind of funky. Fair enough?
Yeah, I just muted us in the room.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me tonight, and I'll get started talking about iMovie. And this is really kind of an iMovie for beginners. I looked at the about iMovie today, and of course they've already made another version upgrade, so it's actually 10.3.4. I didn't adjust my slide, but I'm not sure what they changed with this latest update, but we'll figure that out, I'm sure. So tonight's presentation is going to be recorded because I know you guys, as we do with Southwest Photo Club, we archive these presentations so people who couldn't attend tonight have a chance to review the presentation, or if you were there and want to review it, you have a chance to go back to that YouTube video of it and watch the presentation again. Tonight's presentation is really intended to support your June presentation that Jim Griggs gave about taking video for still photographers and kind of introducing still photographers to video. Where Jim focused on taking video clips and kind of the whole idea of video, I'm going to focus on what to do once you have the clips and you want to do something with them. And so we're going to learn how to begin a project using Apple's iMovie. We'll learn about the iMovie user interface. And for those of you who may be using a PC, well, this is essentially iMovie focused. The interface and the pieces and parts of video editing are fairly similar in all video editors. Where they're located and the details of how they work may be slightly different, but the general concepts are going to be the same. So I think you'll get some benefit out of this presentation kind of at the high level. When we actually open up iMovie and really start digging into it, that may not apply to you in totality, but again, some of those concepts may hold true for you. We'll also gain an understanding in each of the sections of the iMovie interface, kind of what they do, what they're intended to help you achieve. And then we'll, as I said, go live into iMovie and see it in action. I sent to Bruce some handouts, and he may have some of these in the room. I'll be very honest, I'm probably like a lot of still photographers, somewhat intimidated even now with video. And as I reflected myself on why I'm intimidated by it, it's because the verbiage and vernacular can be similar, but is enough different that it throws you. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I certainly have. When you talk to somebody that does a lot of video, I feel like they're talking over my head. I really can't follow what they're talking about because I really don't have that connectivity back to stills. So what I did is I took all the kind of main things that we think about in still photography, made a definition for it, obviously in still, but in the far right-hand column, I tried to relate that to what the video terminology is, so that this gives me a way to kind of think through okay, I understand what it is in stills, this is the counterpart in video. And so I made that available too, because I do think for those of us who are coming at this from a still vantage point, this might help you. Now, I'm not going to claim in any way, shape, or form to be at Jim Griggs's level in terms of my competency with video or being able to teach how to shoot video. But these were a few ideas that I had put together when I kind of got rolling myself in the video environment. And again, this is a handout available to you. And the last one is an iMovie cheat sheet so that you can kind of get an idea of how some of the tools work. So I want to begin kind of with the end in mind, and we'll look at an example of a finished project. And it's really kind of the first one I did. And I have to be honest, because I'm coming at this, or was coming at this from the stills side, I decided I would start making just a slideshow using stills. One, I had the images handy, and so I could easily pull some images together to make a story. But I thought it would also be a good way to kind of learn the core of the software, because I'd be looking at and focusing and learning the basics without falling into a trap of getting kind of freaked out about I'm dealing with video clips. But it also allowed me to think about some of the things that Jim talked to you all about in June, and that's, the wide establishing shots, the medium shots, the detail shots. But it did it in a medium that I was really comfortable with, and that was stills. Once I had a sense of how the software worked, which we'll give you all tonight, then starting to apply those video tools was a whole lot easier and less intimidating. I wasn't trying to learn everything at one time. And then when I switched over to video, I kind of knew what the software, how it works. So now I could really focus in on the video tools. You've got the advantage that I went through all that on my own. And so I'll share what I learned with you tonight. So let's look at what a finished project may look like. And this was done again with stills. I used it as a training platform to some extent. So I used a lot of different transitions and really just experimented. But I think it gives you a sense for what you can do with a few images to make it a bit more entertaining than just showing your friends your images. So even with stills, one of the nice things about iMovie is it gives you a chance to add some movement to the production and make it a little bit more than just watching slide after slide after slide. So what is iMovie? Well, for those of us that use Apple products, it's a free app that comes on iPhones, iPads, and the Mac computers. Our focus today with iMovie is going to be on the Mac computer. Understanding the basics does require a little bit of effort, but it's kind of minimal effort. And based on how deep you want to get into it, you can very, very quickly put together some video clips or slideshows with music and narration and really have a finished product fairly quickly. It's one of those products, I kind of think of it in my own mind like Adobe Photoshop Elements. That was Photoshop on training wheels. And I started there, and it allowed me to kind of build up some skill sets to be able to use Photoshop more effectively. I think iMovie is somewhat the same thing. It's a product that has training wheels. It's not as robust, obviously, as Final Cut Pro, but it's not meant to be. It's a great place to get started with understanding video editing, get a feel for whether you even enjoy it. And then if you want to learn more, it gives you kind of that foundational piece. Unfortunately, there's no iMovie equivalent. There is not an iMovie for Windows or PCs. So you kind of need to do a Google search and figure out what's going to be best for you based on what you want to do with what your initial skill level is. And I think in the PC world, maybe most importantly, what the horsepower of your PC is. Because this is a standard product on a Mac, pretty much it's going to work. But in the PC world, if you don't have enough horsepower, it may take hours to render a project, and that can be very, very frustrating. There are other products out there like this VSDC that offers a very lightweight solution that doesn't take a lot of computing power, but I don't know how effective it would be for your needs. So really, as I said, you need to Google it and find your PC alternative. But our focus tonight's going to be on iMovie. So let me stop, take a breath, and check in and see if there are any questions.
Don't see any questions.
Okay. Please do ask the questions in chat, and then when we actually get into the iMovie, we'll make it fairly interactive for y'all, because that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. So when you open iMovie, this is the view that you get. This is the projects view. You can see projects that you've already created, like Secret Venice here. And let me, can you see my big arrow? Let me do something real quick. I'm going to get out of this. I want to grab a tool to help me. Can you see the green dot?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, this is where you can create new projects as well as see your existing projects. These can be either video clips that you make into a movie, stills like I showed you that you can use to make a slideshow, or a combination of them. iMovie gives you a variety of ways to create a project, and it goes from very simplistic to you're doing everything yourself. You can do a full-fledged movie, or you can do what they call a trailer. And Jim Griggs used the trailer in his presentation in June several times. These were the fairly short videos that ended with a slide that had credits and all that kind of stuff on it. You may, if you attended or reviewed the June meeting, you may recognize this as we go through it, but that's a very, very quick way to create a movie for yourself, and doesn't take a lot of sophistication or a lot of work on your part to put something together. When you go the trailer route, when you open that and click on it, you get this pop-up screen, and it shows you a variety of different themes that you can use or formats. And you can simply hover over one and then touch the play button, and you'll be able to see exactly what that trailer will show you. For our presentation tonight, I chose the travel theme or trailer. And when you open that up, this is what you see. You'll have a place here where you import your images. You'll see the images play here. But what's really cool is in this lower part, you have tabs that you fill out to create the verbiage that's used in your presentation or your movie. On the outline tab, you can put in movie name, who's the group name, who it is. What's really cool, because this was a travel one, you can change the starting and ending location, and they have a map that actually takes you across the country or the world from your starting location to your end. You've got your cast of characters. You can add into delete them here. Always need to start from the bottom as you delete back up. You can put in studio information. You can choose the type of logo you want with these up and down arrows. They're options that you can choose from. They're preset options. And then when you go to the next tab, which is the storyboard, you can actually then start pulling your images that you've imported from here down into the various parts of the storyboard. And it's really interesting to look at these because they tell you what types of images to bring in. And this relates directly back to Jim's presentation, where he talked about those establishing shots, the medium distance shots, the wide shots. And they talk about here using action shots. So it kind of helps to guide you very simply to create a pretty nice movie in a very short amount of time. The other option you can look at is the shot list, and that's this third tab. And this is kind of interesting because it organizes the images that you drag into these based on who the characters are and what the action or sequences are. And so you could build it out here, but if you do build it out from the storyboard, when you then go to this shot list, you'll see those images already populated. So it's really kind of interesting. The other thing that I think you could use this shot list for is if you're planning a trip, you could look at these trailers and decide beforehand which one you want to use, or maybe a couple that you'd like to use. And then you could look at these shot lists and take either screenshots of them or write down the types and the number of shots that you would need to effectively use that trailer. So it could be a really good learning ground as well. So I'll stop here and see if there are any questions on the trailer.
There's one question from Michael. Is there a difference between applications of iMovie on the three platforms, iPhone, iPad, Mac computer? And can the file be transferred and edited between each platform?
Michael, great question. There are some small differences. When I first put this together and the 10.3.3 was out, I had a slide in there that I took out tonight because they've introduced the 10.3.4, and I don't know what's different in it. But on the iPhone 13, for example, they have some new modes of shooting. And so those now are compatible with the iMovie for Mac. The other thing that the iPad and the iPhone especially have are some other tools that are available only in the iMovie on the iPhone and iMac. I'm sorry, iPhone and iPad but they made those compatible so that you can now open those in the Mac version. So Apple's trying to make sure that everything you can do or start is transferable over to the iMovie for Mac. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I don't
And
see
I
any
saw
other.
the question about Yosemite. That may be so far back in their operating system that the current version of iMovie isn't compatible.
Yeah, do you see that
Any other questions?
from Eric? I can't get iMovie on my Mac, Yosemite.
Yes, yeah, I did see that, and I think the current version of iMovie may be incompatible now with Yosemite. That's just a guess.
If one thing, if you have downloaded iMovie to your Yosemite, I read an article where if you go into your the apps thing on your Mac and look at the software you've downloaded, you can sometimes download older versions and it'll still work, but you can Google it. There was some pretty good instructions that somebody had on how to do that.
Good. So once you build out your trailer, you very easily then have a movie that you can export and be able to watch and share with friends. And it is really amazing how fast you can put something together here, because it takes care of building all the title slides, the transitions. You're just basically loading in your images, and you're filling out the forms to tell this software who the players are. So really pretty cool. So when you move to the more advanced ways, or more the ways you can build a movie and have more control, the first is you can build it from a theme, or you can build it from scratch. Now, building it from a theme, it does give you a little bit more control than the trailers did, but it's set up very, very similarly. To get to it, you come over here, to the settings in the panel here. And when you click on it, this little pop-up box appears. I made an enlargement of it so that we could actually see it tonight. And you see that it defaults to no theme. But when you click in this box, you actually get taken to a pop-up that shows the themes. And just like with the trailers, when you hover, sorry, got carried away with my mouse. When you hover over the image, you get a play button. And again, just like with the trailers, you can press play and see what that theme looks like. You've got a bit more control than the trailer, but it isn't as much control as if you build the movie from scratch. And that's going to be the focus of the rest of tonight's program. So let me again stop, and I see there are a couple of items in chat, and see if there's anything else that we need to answer. Okay, that was still having to do with Yosemite. Any other questions so far? Okay, I will keep going. Let me close my chat box. So now we're going to talk about the movie interface and learn about the different sections. And again, there's a lot of commonality between different video editing programs about what these sections are. Where they are placed may be radically different, but you're going to have generally some of the same concepts in play. So over on the left here is the content library. And when you load images, when you click on the My Movie here at the top, you'll see all your images show up. If you want to pull images from your Photos app, you can click on that, and then you'll have those images available to pull into the iMovie as well. So some neat things there. you know, Apple does a nice job of creating an ecosystem that kind of works seamlessly. And this is how they pull some of those things together in iMovie. The next section is the event browser. And we'll do a deep dive into this in a second, because there are multiple tabs that are important in this event browser section. And then we have the viewer section, and this is where you see the elements that you've imported. It's also where you can do some adjustments. Up here across the top, you'll see these icons. They're very small and kind of hard to see in this presentation. So I did number them and label them so that we can kind of see what's available to us. You can correct for color balance, color correction, cropping. You can stabilize your video. You can control volume. You have some noise reduction tools and an equalizer. You can do slow motion here. Very interestingly, there are filters and audio effects that you can pull in. So the filters kind of are a uniform filter like maybe sepia that you could apply across the entire project. And then there's clip information. So a really important panel in terms of the iMovie interface. And then you have your project pane. And one of the things that you can do is when you're in the iMovie app for live, there's a little crosshair that you can find between these sections, and you can pull and drag these sections to make them bigger or smaller based on what you want to see and what you need to zoom in on. Now in the project pane, we've got the playhead, which is this white line. In the live application, when you're using it, it turns yellow. And then you have your timeline. And this is where you begin to drag your elements of the movie into, excuse me, your video clips, your images, your audio files. All of those can be dragged down into your timeline, and then you can start moving them around, cutting and trimming them to make the movie that you envision in your head. So these are the key elements of the iMovie interface. Any questions about these?
Don't see any.
Okay, I'll keep moving. So let's do a deep dive on the event browser. And the first tab is where you can import your media. It's called My Media. When you are starting a project, there's obviously going to be nothing there, and you can click on this box right here to import your images. If you've already started a project and have new elements you want to bring in, you can go up to File, and then you'll see in the file a drop down or an option for import. And you end up in the same exact place as you do when you click on this. So there are more than one way to skin the cat, but that's how you start to bring your images and video clips and other elements into the iMovie. And as I said, once they're imported, this is where you see them. The viewer, this is where you will see how your elements work. If it's a video clip and you press play, you'll see that video run through its motions right here. If it's a transition, you'll see how the transition works. You can put a still in here and see how it's going to be viewed. So this is another key element. And again, you have tools that you can apply, especially to the video clips that are in the viewer. And then again, this is where you drag your assets that are in the import box or in the event browser to start framing up and forming your movie. And as I said, these are the elements that are in pretty much every video editor. Where they are and how they're placed may be a bit different. than what you see here in iMovie, but the concepts are going to be the same. So the event browser, it's where your stuff all is brought into iMovie. And as a best practice, I would recommend organizing all of the assets that you're going to bring into an iMovie in your file manager. Get everything into the same file folder as I've done here, so that when you access it in iMovie, everything you want for your project is pretty much in the same place and easily gotten to. This will make your life a lot easier than having to go search through many different file folders over here to find the assets you want for that movie. Obviously, you can do it that way. I think this may be a little bit more streamlined. It's something that we're used to working with in terms of the file management system over here. And this doesn't show up in iMovie. I just overlaid the file management view so you could see that what I have here is replicated when you open import media. Any questions so far? We tracking okay, Bruce?
Yeah, we're doing good. I don't see
Okay.
any questions.
Now, this is really important and is kind of something that's not real obvious in iMovie. To set the project's resolution, it's all based on the first video that you drag into the timeline. So if you have a mixture of, let's say, some 4K video shot at 60 frames a second and some 1080 frames that are shot at 30 frames a second, which one of those clips you drag in first is going to set the tone for the whole project? And unfortunately, you can't change it unless you delete everything and start over. So it's really important to know what you're doing in terms of that first video clip. Once you've dragged that first video clip in and set the resolution and format, you can move that video clip to a different position in the timeline, or after you've brought in some other assets, you can cut it completely, and your project will remain either a 4K or a 1080 project. You don't have to keep that clip in there. And when we get into the live view of this, I'll show you a couple of tricks that I think may be worth thinking about to help you set the resolution the way you want and ensure that you don't get yourself caught into doing an awful lot of work and then realizing that you've done it as a 1080 formatted project when you really wanted 4K. Looks like we have a question in chat. Okay, we're going to get to the music question here in a second, so I'm going to defer on that.
Hey, Gary, since I'm running the screen and I don't want to put my chat up there, one question. Could you make a little mini high res clip, for example, that you just save, and then instead of having to worry about what you shot your project, and you just drag that clip in first, set your tone, and then you do what you want from there on out and delete it if you need to.
You just found my secret sauce and jumped ahead to what I was going to show you in the live version. Is I think it makes an awful lot of sense to do exactly that, is to make a set of clips, a different resolution, and just hold those in a file folder somewhere, and then bring those in to set your resolution.
And then Steve Roper had the question: is 4K the way to record then? Personally,
I think it makes the most sense to do that, because you can always downgrade your export, but you can't upgrade it. So if you start at 4K, you can export 1080, 720. But if you start at one of those lower ones, you can't go back to 4K. So I think it's a really smart way to go, is to set your resolution at the very highest quality clip that your camera or iPhone or whatever device you're using to record video could be a drone even, whatever that highest resolution option is, to record a clip and keep it and do exactly what you talked about. Drop that set clip in first as kind of your always starting point, and then go from there. Make sense? But this is one of those things, because we're on training wheels, you don't have an option in a menu to set. And Apple defaulted to setting this based on the first clip you drop. And this was kind of hard to figure out, but it's something that is the way Apple has chosen to set things up. So Steve, you're asking for a repeat on this. Because resolution is set based on the first clip, it makes complete sense to always drop in your highest resolution clip that your camera can produce. So whether that's your iPhone that you're using to record video, a drone, your mirrorless camera, or a DSLR, whatever tool you're using to record video, whatever it can make as its highest resolution output is the clip you want to drop in first to set the tone for the entire project. Once you then bring in other assets, you can either move that clip to a different position or cut it out of the timeline entirely, and the project is going to stay that resolution. Does that make sense? Excuse me for a second while I take a quick sip. This is one of the most important things that you need to understand to start a project. So I'm glad we spent some time on it and got questions asked and answered. So this little strip here at the bottom is just an enlargement of what you will see when you bring media into the event browser. But I enlarged it because I wanted you to see that if you do bring in still images, you can easily identify them because they're going to have a little camera in the upper left-hand corner where the video clips do not. Now, the audio, we talked, there was a question about that a few seconds ago. We'll talk about it, and if I don't answer your question, please ask it again. iMovie defaults to your music library. So in my music library, you can see I have a lot of Italian songs. I'm half Italian. I love Italy. So it's natural I'm gonna have a lot of Italian songs in my music library. But this is going to default to your library. Now, there's a trap door here in my mind. If you use these files as your music for your project and then try to upload it to social media, one, it may not let you. And two, you leave yourself open for violating copyright. Just as we don't like people using our images, we don't want to use somebody else's music if they don't allow it. And so the workaround is to do what Jim Griggs mentioned, and that is to find some royalty-free sources for music. And that's what I included in that Secret Venice video that we watched. I found some royalty-free music from this resource. And really all they ask you to do is credit that you found the music from them. And that was that end slide that you saw. I was crediting where I found the music. So it's a real easy way to be able to upload projects that have music attached and not violate copyright or royalty information. This is also where you will find sound effects. And you can see that right here. And if you're good at GarageBand, you can also find your GarageBand files here as well. So let me take a stop and make sure that we answered the question about audio. Looks
Yeah.
like we must have, because I don't see anything new. The third tab in the event browser is your titles tab. These are all baked titles that you can pull and drop into your timeline. And once you do, you can obviously change the text, what it says. You can change the font size, the font type, and the font color. What you're really doing is you're bringing in a placeholder of what the title slide looks like. Now, if you're like me and you're somewhat of a control freak, you can also go to Photoshop and create your own title slides. In Photoshop, you would need to make an image that is sized to 2560 by 1440 pixels. Do whatever you want to create that title slide. And then when it's complete, save it as a PNG file, unless you're overlaying that on some other kind of background, which you'll see I did when I show you the finished project that I'll share with you at the end of the presentation. But if you save it as a PNG file, then you can drop it onto one of the background slides that they have available to you. You can pull these into your timeline and then pull the title slide on top of it. And let's say you pulled this orange one down into your timeline, you could then drop your title slide on top of this orange one. And because you saved that Photoshop title as a PNG file, you'll be able to see the orange background. Make sense? Not seeing anything in chat, so I'll move on. And then the last tab in the event browser is the transitions tab. Now, I know Jim said that he doesn't like to see these used. I used them between every slide in the example I showed you, but I was doing it as a slideshow, which he kind of indicated was okay to do. I was also using it as a training tool for myself to see how these things work and what they did. Obviously, as Jim mentioned, these can really be overused. And so watch your favorite TV show or movie to see how they are used and see maybe some tricks or ways that you can use them effectively. One of the things that you can do is you can scrub your mouse across these transitions. And as you do so, you hold down your left mouse button. And when you do that, you actually see what the transition does. So kind of a cool thing that Apple included in iMovie. So that's kind of the event browser in detail. And that really was important for us to go through because that's where a lot of our assets live and a lot of the things we need to do are pulled from. And so we'll show that in a bit more detail as we start a project. And that's what we're going to do next. But as we start that project, we're going to need to do a few things, kind of a few housekeeping things. There are some system preferences on your Mac computer we're going to need to set. There's some iMovie preferences that you may want to change. Once we do that, we'll create a short movie made up of a few video clips, still images, and audio. And as we do that, we'll learn how to add title slides and transitions. We'll learn how to cut the video clips to shorten it. We'll talk about how the stabilization works and what it does to your video clips. We'll talk about cropping. And this is really a useful tool, obviously with your video clips, but the Ken Burns crop is really useful for still images. And it's a way to take a portrait image and make it look like it is a landscape and works very nicely in a 16:9 aspect ratio. We'll talk about doing voiceovers if you want to. And then we'll talk about how you can pull a still image out of your video clip, which you can do in iMovie. And then we'll learn how to adjust the time of our overall project so that things end together, our audio and our video. And lastly, we'll render the video, which is essentially exporting it so it can be viewed on our iPhones or our Android phones or iPads, computer, and social media. So before we jump into going live with iMovie, let me take a breath here and see if there are any questions that we need to address.
Don't see any.
Okay. Now, when we jump into the live application, I will try to initially tell you what I'm doing with my mouse because obviously you can't see it. But essentially, to drag assets from your event browser or drag, stills, video clips, audio that you may have brought in, or when we're in any of the other tabs, it's a hold down the left mouse button and drag. That's also what you use to scrub across when they're in the event browser. Now, once something's in your timeline, what I'll be oftentimes doing is clicking on it with the left mouse button to select it, and then holding down the right mouse button to get to the pop-up menu, which allows us to do additional work with that specific clip. So that's kind of the ins and out of what I'm going to be doing with the mouse. I'll talk you through that for the initial few times, but I don't want to always have to tell you that's what I'm doing. So I thought it might be more effective to tell you up front that when I'm dragging and scrubbing, I'm holding down the left mouse button. When I'm going for a pop-up menu, I'm holding down the right mouse button. Hopefully that makes sense. Looks like there are a couple of questions in chat, so let's address those. That Michael has a great question about Instagram and other social media platforms that are going to Reels that are vertically oriented, and wondering if iMovie can create vertically oriented videos. And the answer I will give you right now is I'm not 100% sure, but we can play that with that when we look at live video clips and see if we can use the crop tool to create that orientation. By default, it's going to be in a 16:9 orientation, and I don't know that they have a default crop to go to video, but certainly they may do that as that becomes more and more popular. So Steve makes a comment. It's a lot of information I'm sharing, and I realize that it's one of the key advantages of having this recorded is you can go back and listen to this. But what we talked about now are kind of the foundational things. And as we start to play with the tool itself, you'll see these things in action, and hopefully it'll make more and more sense to you. So let's go to iMovie. Again, this is what you're going to see when you open up iMovie. You have the things that you've already created, as well as a way to create something new. I want to first show you the resolution test. And this is, I'm going to pull in some assets, and I'm going to go to the so here are the items I have for resolution, and I did exactly what I think it was Bruce suggested. Make different short images, kind of throwaway videos at different resolutions that you can bring in. Now I'm going to go I'm going to bring these in real quick. And if you click on these are just kind of throwaway videos that I took. In previous versions, when you clicked on the information tab or icon that would give you information about the clip, the video resolution information was right here, which made it really handy. But for some reason, they've taken that away. Now you can get to it by going to File, Share, I'm sorry, not Image, cancel that. File, Share, File. And when you do that, you can see what the highest resolution is. In this case, it's 4K. So what I would suggest doing, instead of having to do this to identify your image resolutions, especially if you take the time to shoot a few that are kind of going to be your placeholder resolution images, I'm going to select all these and delete them. I would suggest going into your image, importing your image media, and do what I did next, which was create a set of images that I renamed with that information already attached to it. So when I go to this and then I click on the information, you can see that this is a 4K video recorded at 24 frames per second. This one is a 4K video recorded at 30 frames per second. This is a 4K image recorded at 60 frames per second. And then this is 1080 at 30, and this is 1080 at 60. So because this is our highest resolution, this would be the one that I'd pull in first. Now I've got that all set, and I can, once we pull in some additional assets, I can delete that. So now I'm going to go back to File, Import Media, come back over here to look for the media that I want to bring in. And there's my music. Here are the project images. So I would bring in all of these project images and import those. And then I would also go and import my audio. So now I can bring in an asset, and then once we start building the timeline, we can delete this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring in one of the first slides that I'm going to, or first video clips that I'm going to use. And now that that's in place, I'm going to highlight this. I left clicked on this in the timeline. I right click and I am going to delete it. So now if we go over to our settings, we can see that we're still a 4K. We're still a 4K project, even though I deleted that 4K asset. So that's taking the concept that I think it was Bruce talked about and applying it. So now we've got our first clip here, and we can make this a little bit, take up a little bit less room or take up more room by using the slider here on the clip size. And then we can start running the video and see what it is all about. And it's probably much longer than we want. We probably want only a few seconds of this. So I would run this for a few seconds until it gives you a flavor of what we're looking at. We're looking at a fire taking place in this scene. And then once we're at a place where I want to cut it, I would click on that in that timeline, right click on it, and I would split the clip. Because I'm going to use this first part of the clip, I'm going to highlight the second part and again delete it. And now we have a condensed view of that clip, and we can actually shrink that down, but it's only a few seconds now of that video that I took to kind of help start telling the story that we want to tell. Now, I wanted to do this so that we have a clip in place and we make sure that our project is still set at 4K. Now, obviously, before we go much further, I would want to add a title. So we can pick any of these that we want. This is the one that I used in the Secret Venice. We can drop that in front of the video clip that we made, and we can click on the text and replace it. With whatever text we want. So I'm going to title this little movie we'll put together, Trouble at the High Trestle. And I'm going to put here that it's the Greeley Model Railroad. And now, when we run this, you can see we have our title slide in place before it goes into our first video clip. Obviously, on this title slide, I select it again by left clicking on it. We probably will want to change the font size. And we do that. Up. I'm double clicking on it again. And right here, it's set to auto, but we can change that. And we want Trouble at the High Trestle to be much larger than the Greeley. So I'm going to put this down to something below 80, let's say 60. And I'm going to just type that in, press return. And now when we play this, Trouble at the High Trestle is bigger than the Greeley Model Railroad. And then we start seeing that we've got a fire underneath the trestle. So let me stop here. It looks like we have a question in chat. Oh, great question. Phil asked, if you want to make a video of just stills, do you need to worry about the resolution? No, you just start bringing your stills in, Phil. So that makes it real easy. So now the rest of this project all depends on your creativity and what you want to do to start building out a story. So we've got this fire going that we're aware of, and I've got a couple of clips of it. The one that we just saw, I've got another one here that we can drag in. Actually, that may be the same clip. I'm going to cut that. Thought I had another clip of this, but maybe not. Yeah, I do have another clip of this. So I'm going to pull this clip in and actually put it in front of the original one. And I'm going to isolate in when we get to looking at the forest next to the trestle. So starting here is kind of where I want to have this clip show because it shows we've got this fire next to the trestle. So I'm going to split the clip again, and that's placing the playhead where I want to start this clip, splitting the clip. I'm going to delete the left part of the clip because that's part that I don't want. And now the clip is starting here. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to crop it a bit because I would like I need to move the chat box here. Give me a second. So I'm going to crop this. And so what I did to get to the crop tool is I clicked on the clip in the timeline, and now the crop tool becomes available. I can crop to fill, and I want to do that because I want to bring down and eliminate this part that's obviously not part of the scene above it. And then once I do that, now I'm still getting, I need to zoom in a little bit more. So you see, you need to kind of play with it to learn where you need to crop. So this is quite a long clip, and I don't want it to be that long. So we're going to come back to the beginning. See that we see the forest fire, and that's probably enough to establish the idea that we've got a forest fire. So again, I'm going to click here, left click on the mouse to highlight that that's where I want to cut the clip. Now I right click, split the clip again, and then now I'm going to delete the stuff to the left. So now I've got two clips that are essentially talking about this fire or relaying that we've got a fire near the trestle. And that's why we've got trouble at the high trestle. Make sense so far? This is all about trying to put together a few clips to tell the story. And what we did here is we clicked on this, we went to the crop tool, and we figured out how far down we needed to crop to be able to eliminate this distracting piece of real life that you see at the Model Railroad Museum or Model Railroad place up in Greeley, but you just want to focus in on the screen. And that's what we did to crop.
Hey, Gary, I had a question on the clips that you have. How do you tell how long they are? Where does it show you the length of the clip?
Great question. So I'm clicking on the first one, and right here, it says it's 5 seconds. See that?
Yep, thank you.
And here, our intro is 2 seconds. This clip is now saying it's 4 seconds. This one is 7 seconds, and we can, adjust that as needed. Now, you hear a lot of, in both of these, you hear stuff in the background that really doesn't add to it. It's background noise. So what I'd like to do on both of these is separate the audio out and delete it. So I'm going to click on this one, and again, right click, and it says detach audio. See right here where it says detach audio? Now the audio is separate, and I can do one of two things. I could delete this, or I can grab the volume bar right here and bring it all the way down to nothing. And now when I play this, you've got no audio in there. Again, you can hear the background in the second one. So we'll do the same thing with this. We'll grab that, right click. So I'm left clicking on it. I'm right clicking to bring up the pop-up menu. And then I'm Looking for my detach audio. Now the audio is here. I can grab it and bring it all the way down, or simply right click on this and delete it. Now what's really cool is we can go up to our audio and we can look for sound effects. And I'm going to look for a police siren. And here's the audio of police siren. If I play it,
We didn't get any sound on this side.
so now you hear the sound effect of the police siren. So I'm going to pull that down and place it here. And I really only want the part of it where up to where it, I don't want it passing because I don't want that effect. I want it like a police car's coming into the scene. And so probably right there is as much of it as I need. And so again, I'm going to left click on that spot to select where I want to cut it, right click. I'm going to, I didn't get it there. Now I got it set. See, it's yellow now, which means that I'm ready to do something with this. And now I can, should be able to split this clip. And I don't know why I'm not. Love it when things don't show as you expect them to. Let me go back and select this. I'm going to select the audio, and I'm going to, this worked great the other day. So I'm going to trim the playhead. So that's a different way to do it. I right clicked and I did the trim to playhead. So now with the audio, it's I got rid of that Doppler effect of it going by. Now, one of the really cool things is, see how there's this little dot right here in the audio? And now you see that I've got arrows on both sides and it says fade audio out. I can grab those with my left mouse button and pull them to the left. And now watch what happens. So it fades the audio out. So that's a neat trick you can use. I'm going to delete that to get it out of the way. And so now I'm going to pull this back to shorten it to match up our clips.
Yeah, we have a question here.
Sorry, Gary, I know you said if you click on the clip, it'll tell you how long it is.
Yes.
What I was looking for is, let's say I know that clip is 6 seconds long, but I want to cut it at 4 seconds.
Oh,
How do I find where 4 seconds is?
okay, great. So, that's a really great question. And I think told you incorrectly. So I'm hovering over this now, and it's actually showing us that this clip is 2.9 seconds, where this clip is 2.6 seconds. So what we're probably going to have to look for is our total time. So we've got 4 seconds here, and you can see it's running. And it's really going to be based on then looking for this. If you want this clip to be 4 seconds, you're going to need to watch that. And I'm going to select it and watch what happens when I extend it. Do you see that time changing? Can you see that the counter changing? So now this clip is at 4 seconds. Can you
Got it.
see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you may and may not want to have your clip run that long, but if you do, that's where you would see it. So I'm going to come back to about 2.5 seconds for this part of the clip. So now we have a feeling, and I'm going to select the audio and I'm going to pull it back so that it's even here. So now we have a sense of we've got a fire and we've got people coming. So let me pull in a couple of other things to make this interesting. I'm going to pull in this image of following the train. And I don't want an awful lot of this. This is 22 seconds of video. I only want a few seconds of this. And so what I'm really watching is up in this viewer, I'm going to just go until I feel like it gives you a flavor that you're watching yourself going down the track from the inside of the train cab. I'm going to go here, right click on that, and I'm going to split the clip, and I'm going to select this and delete the right-hand part of it. So now we've got just a bit of the train. And again, I'm going to separate the audio, and I'm going to delete that audio because it's not very good. And then I'm going to bring down this clip of the passenger train, and I'm going to drop it underneath this. Oh, did that do what? No, that didn't do what I wanted. Hit Control Z. I'm going to bring this and bring it in next to it. And now we're going to transition from being in the cab to out of the cab. Question? So I want to take from this point forward. And again, I'm going to left click where I want to separate or split this clip, right click, split clip, and delete the left-hand part of it. And so now we're going into the train, and then we're seeing the exterior. And I'm going to detach. I'm going to run this for a few seconds till you see that it's over the trestle. Again, I'm going to split it right here, and I'm going to delete this part of it. I'm going to come back to this part of it, and I'm going to separate the audio. So again, right click, detach audio. And now I'm going to take this audio and I'm going to move it to where it starts over there and now ends here. So I've taken the same audio and spread it across two different clips.
And there's a question in the chat box.
Sure. Okay, the question is, as you're editing and cutting your video, is this only done in iMovie clips, or is it being done on your original video clip? Just so that you don't permanently do something to your original. You're only doing it to the asset in the timeline. So you're not doing anything to your originals up here. You're only doing it to the the assets as you pull it into the timeline. And this is a great way to then be able to start to build out your clips. As you probably saw, let's play this clip again. There's a little bit of camera movement in it. So we can select that clip. I'm gonna hide the chat again. So we've selected this, and now I want to run it through the stabilization, which is this fourth icon. And so I'm gonna have this clip stabilized. And you do that by selecting the stabilization and then selecting stabilize shaky video. And it just ran that through, and now watch what happens in terms of, see how much smoother that is. It's still got some shake to it, but it's better than it was. So I don't want to get too deep in the woods, but I wanted to give you a flavor for what you're doing. You're just pulling assets in and dropping them in place where you want to. And let's say we decided we wanted this scene in front of this scene. So we can pull this just over in front of it. And now we still have the same assets in play, but we've got it set up differently, and the audio is coming in at a different point too. So we need to pull that police car audio back over across this. So
Steve,
now
there
we
was
have
another
audio
question-
in sync.
Another question, chat. Juan Russo, he says, I understand the split and delete. How is it different from shrinking the clip?
Great question. When you just shrink the clip by pulling it in from the edges, you're actually not you're trying to tell it to use the whole clip in a shorter amount of time. So let's bring one in and see what happens when we do that. So now we've got this fairly long clip, and if we grab it from the and this is a long clip. This is a minute worth of clip. If we grab it at the end and start shrinking it, as you can see, we're making it shorter in the, we are making it shorter, but you have definitely less control over where it's, how it's being shortened. So I drug it over, but now we just shorten it from this really long clip, and we don't have as finite control or as much control over how much of it's being shortened, where by splitting it, I can wait until this train gets into view. Let's say I want to wait till right here, and then I want to use this part of the clip. So you would, get your point where you want to split it, and then split it. And now you can delete the left part of it and have it show just that part of it. I don't know, Juan, if I'm answering your question. We can.
Yes, thank you very much.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you.
really compressing it, but what you want to do is control the parts of the clip that you want to use. And that's why we're selecting it, splitting it, and then deleting it, so that what we see are the parts we want to use. Making sense?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't want to, keep doing, I'm showing you that we can do the same things over and over again. And that's how you end up putting together your movie. But let me make sure that we've touched on some of the things that we really needed to. One of the things we failed to touch on were some of the system preferences. We just jumped into the movie. So let me go back and look at system preferences that we need to make sure we adjust to effectively use iMovie. So one of those is to look at your security and privacy. And so I am double clicking on that. You want to make sure that you set up your microphone to be able to, you want to let iMovie have access to it. So you want to make sure that this checkbox is checked. And so that's an important system preference we want to make sure we have in place. One of the iMovie preferences we want to make sure we have in place is that you want to upload the slow motion automatically. You can set up the type of crop that you default to. I want to default to the Ken Burns. You can default your photo duration. You can default your transition. And so these are things that you can set up so that as you're pulling elements in or assets in, they're already defaulted. And we didn't do that. We just kind of jumped into making a movie, and I'm sorry we didn't set that stuff up initially. Let's look at the Ken's burn effect, because that's something that's really cool. And I need to find a still. And it doesn't look like in what I brought in, I have a still. So let's make a still. Actually, let me go to a different project where I know I have a still. Okay, here's a still that's a credit. So I'm going to drag this into our project timeline, and it's a credit. But I wanted to show you, because it is a still, I want to show you the crop on it and how the Ken Burns effect works, because this is a really cool effect. So the Ken Burns crop gives you a starting and ending point. And this really isn't a good one to use. Let me pull a still out of an image, because we want to show you how to do that too. So I'm going to pull a still out of this sequence. Right here is a good place to pull a still. And you can do it two ways. You can click on it and actually, let me show you the easiest way. Right here is where we're set. If you go up here to, I got to move this. You can save current piece as a frame, and you're going to take this and you'll actually pull it out. And that way you can take that and make a still out of it. But this Ken Burns crop, I'll go back to this just for the sake of time. You can take this starting crop and pull it down. And now as you play this, it's going to go from here to here. I really want to, I know where I can go. Here, let's go right here. This is a great place to show you the Ken Burns crop. So we've got this still image. and we go to the Ken Burns crop, and we can select our areas to crop. And this is not working the way I expect. There we go.
Got a lot of
Okay.
technology.
Well,
Yeah, sorry. Where I was screwing up is I needed to select the image in the timeline. Once you do select it in the timeline, now you can do your cropping. So your Ken Burns crop, as you can see, you have the solid line is your starting point, and your end is the dash. So you can I said that wrong. Your starting point, you can it's labeled start, and so you can place that where you want and crop it where you want. So let's pull it down, so we're kind of cropping from here, and then you can select the size and shape of your end and place it where you want. And then when you play this, you can see that it's taking your still from your starting point to your end point. What's really cool is if this were a portrait image, when you play it, it plays as a horizontal play. Now, we were asking about whether or not we could make this crop into something that would be used for Instagram. And it does not look like we can. It looks like the only way that it crops is going to be as a horizontal. So we can't turn this into a vertical crop. Let's see if we can do that with a an asset that we're bringing in. Let me go back to the one we were just working on. No, that wasn't it. This is where we were working. Let's pull this one in and see if we have it selected, if we can turn this into a nope, it doesn't look like we can change this into a portrait crop for Instagram. So I know that was a question that was asked earlier. So I know we're running out of time. Let me show you just a couple other things. If you want to do a voiceover, all you have to do is click on the microphone here, and it allows you then to start recording. And you can record a voiceover, and then should have recorded the voiceover. Oh, you know what?
I wonder if it's because you're at the end of a clip, there's nothing to record over.
It could be, and it also could be that you're absolutely right. So it does a countdown, and now you can record a voiceover for whatever you want. And then when you're done, you can just hit the end. And now you've got, if we come and play this, and now you can record a voiceover for whatever you want. And so that would be how you do a voiceover. And if you've got music that you've got, that's that. Here's our music. you can drop that in over the whole thing. And one of the really important things with background music is to lower the volume of it so it doesn't play so loudly that it really takes over your presentation. I think that may still be a little bit loud. And then you got the background music and you still hear the other elements of your project. But really the idea is you can start layering your music, your audio clips, and your stills to create a final project.
So Gary, in your audio, where you have one at the top and one at the bottom,
Yes.
is that like ranking? So
Yes.
if you wanted to say the audio track on the bottom, you wanted to make it more prevalent, you just move it up, drag it up above the other ones, or?
You don't even really need to, because you can adjust the volume within each clip.
Okay.
So here's so we have the police car here, but you could hear the background music still. We can raise and lower these to make them do what we want in terms of the actual final project. So it really depends on what you want to do. And the last thing that I really need to show you is how you export it. And up here, you go to your share and you can share for YouTube and Facebook, or you can export just for a file to play on your computer. Or you can pull an individual frame out by exporting here. I've not tried the export to email because I don't see a value to it. But if you want YouTube, Facebook, or if you just want to export to your computer, you just take this and export it. You can choose what quality you want, what resolution. Because we started this as a 4K, we can export it as a 4K. And then all you do is press next. You name it. And then just save it. And it's starting to export, and you can see that up here. Because we did this as a 4K, it's going to take a little bit of time, but I have a fairly fast computer, and so it will actually do that, export. So let me check in with our chat and questions. Great question, and I bet you're right. If you did a video that was captured vertically, it would come in vertically, and so I think you would then be able to edit it that way. All of the video that I captured was in the landscape orientation because I wasn't really thinking about Instagram, but I bet you're absolutely right. And the tools would work the same way. Phil, we have the voiceover here. And now you can record a voiceover for whatever you want. And then when you're done, you can, and still going on in the background, I'll turn it up a little bit, is the background music. And now you can record a voiceover for whatever you want. And then when you're done, and I think, Bruce, you asked a question about hierarchy, because this is above it. When that comes into play, it does have a more prominent position, and you can hear it better than the background music. The background music's automatically lowering. Great question. Let's touch real quickly on transitions. last week when we were together, I tried to show you how to add a transition between video clips and ran into an alert that I didn't quite know what to do with. Since then, I've done some research on what that alert is actually telling us and shared that with Bruce. And he asked if we could record a very short little add-on video to insert into your replay. And that's what we're doing right now. So as a quick review on transitions, you can find them on the transition tab within the event browser. And if you simply run your mouse across the clip or the transition in that event browser, you can see in the viewer exactly what it does. So to use one, you simply press down on the left mouse button and drag it into the position you want to use it. It's highlighted in yellow, and when I double click on it, I now have the opportunity to change the time for this transition. A 0.2 second transition doesn't really give enough time for a crossfade, so I want to change this to 3 seconds. Obviously an arbitrary number, but it's kind of what I want to run with. So when I hit apply, we get the alert that we ran into last week. And if you read this alert carefully, it says the clips do not have enough media available to change the length of this transition. And in my mind, what that's telling me is I need to lengthen the clips, make them longer so there's enough space for the transition to occur. And that's where I was getting into trouble. That's not what this is saying. What it's really telling us when you dig into the nuts and bolts of it is that it's actually telling you you need to steal some time from either the clip on the left or the clip on the right of the transition, or both. And by stealing that time, you're then giving that time to the transition. And there are two ways to do this. The first is to click on this checkbox and then press OK. By doing so, from this point forward, iMovie will take care of trimming the clips to add time to the transition. You may not want to do that because then you've given some of the control over to iMovie and you may not get the result you want. So you may want to do that manually. And to do that, you just simply press OK, get rid of the alert, and then you come down and come to the side of one of your clips and you can see how you get a double arrowed cursor. And then you simply drag that over to shorten the clip. And now I'm going to try to add 3 seconds again and see what happens. Well, I got the alert again. So what that's telling me, I didn't give the transition enough time. So I need to, again, close out of the alert and drag this a little bit further so that now when I add 3 seconds, there is enough time for the transition to occur. And as you see, when I click 3 seconds and apply, I didn't get an alert again. So now I know it's going to work. And if we go back and press the play button, we can watch the transition. And lo and behold, it works just fine. So that's the workaround to that alert if you encounter it. And you may, because obviously, depending on how you've set your preferences for the transition speed, you may not have enough time to do some of these transitions that take a little bit of time to make them effective.
And then one more question was how many video tracks are supported?
I've gotten into several without having any problems, but I actually don't know the answer to that. And there may be a limit, and that may be one of the issues of why you would want to go to Final Cut Pro over iMovie. I'm going to go to a project that I was playing around with last night, and that's this idea of the trouble at the high trestle. And you can see I have several audio tracks and a couple of video tracks. And Close the chat. And it all runs fairly smoothly. But it really is a matter of just playing around with it. The more you play with it, the more you get comfortable, and you'll be able to put together your movie. If you don't want to go through all of what we went through, you can certainly use the built-in features that we talked about. I'm going to show you just kind of to close out one that I did for Southwest Photo. And dispatchers make sure the trains run smoothly on the Oregon, California, and Eastern Railway. Video of the layout runs through the windows of this F unit. Eventually, the museum hopes to engage the throttle to actually run the model trains on the layout. So without an awful lot of effort, you can put together something that's watchable. And the nice thing, the way iMovie works, is you don't have to worry about saving things. It automatically saving the stuff for you. And then when you come back into the projects, if you'd started a new one, it would ask you to name it, but it's all right there for you. So I know we got a little bit off track on this because things weren't working the way we expected them to, but hopefully that gives you a sense of how to put together an iMovie. Any questions remaining, Bruce?
I don't see any. Thanks, Gary. It was great. Appreciate the effort you put into it. It looks like a lot of work.
The timing is perfect though, because I have to do one.
No, this is good. I think, and I'm sure for myself and some of us, there'll be plenty of trial and error, but at least this kind of lets you know what to expect, and it's going to be a lot of kind of playing around with it. As far as, and I don't know if you have experience in any of the other programs in that, are there, would you say, advantages to this one other than, I guess, for those of us that have Mac products and that, and it's free, but say this program in comparison to, let's say, like Adobe Rush or Adobe Premiere Pro, that obviously the disadvantage on those ones is that they have a cost to them. But as far as like quality and these applications or features and so forth in that, do you see any advantages of one over the other?
I really can't comment on that because the only one that I've spent time to try to learn is iMovie.
Sure.
And I'll be honest, I'm more of a still photographer, like probably most of us are, and the iMovie gave me a chance to dabble with the video clips, but more importantly, I like it for the idea of putting together a slideshow using stills, as Phil asked about originally.
Adobe Premiere Pro let you color grade and
Right.
do
Oh yeah,
a lot of adjustments to
Right. And for a paid
this-
subscription, especially those ones get a lot more than just what we're used to paying on our.
Yeah.
It's a pretty steep learning curve on Adobe too.
yeah.
That's
That's
what I
what
use on my PC.
It's
Okay.
pretty robust and they have a lot. to do.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good free one.
Which one?
Da Vinci.
Resolve.
Da Vinci. All right, Gary. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Since I don't see any other questions, a couple comments saying thank you. And I will end the online portion.
And thanks for letting me join you guys tonight. I think the key thing is I wanted to give you a sense of how the stuff worked. And then it's just a matter of playing with it to put together something that you're happy with.
Yeah. And then to get to those that are online, we will be posting this online. And what I'll do is on the YouTube link, I'll put the handouts that Gary put up there. I think I can add them to the thing below, and then you can download them from there.
Great.
And let me stop sharing so that I don't, there you go. You've got control back now.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the
Thank
invite.
you.